Bernie Sanders spoke to Jake Tapper after Joe Manchin came out and announced, I'm going to vote no on Build Back Better. There's nothing you can do to the bill that would make me be in favor of it. So in other words, Manchin's a liar because he said, we'll work it out. I promise. You have my word. Well, what's your word worth? Nothing. So Bernie talks to Jake Tapper, and for the first time, finally, now granted, this is way too little too late, but this is the thing he should have been doing for a much longer time. He calls Joe Manchin corrupt, and he goes in.
Well, I think he's going to have a lot of explaining to do to the people of West Virginia to tell them why he doesn't have the guts to take on the drug companies and lower the cost of prescription drugs, why he is not prepared to expand home health care. West Virginia is one of the poorest states in this country. You got elderly people and disabled people who would like to stay at home or forced into nursing homes. He's going to have to tell the people of West Virginia why he doesn't want to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and eyeglasses. I've been to West Virginia a number of times, and it's a great state, beautiful people, but it is a state that is struggling. And he's going to have to tell the people of West Virginia why he's rejecting what the scientists of the world are telling us, that we have to act boldly and transform our energy system to protect future generations from the devastation of climate change. You know, what's going on now, Jake, in Washington is the big money interests are pouring hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that we continue to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, that the rich do not start paying their fair share of taxes. And I would have hoped that we could have had at least 50 Democrats on board who have the guts to stand up for working families and take on the lobbyists and the powerful special interests. We have no Republicans, not one Republican in the United States Senate or the House for that matter, is prepared to stand up to the drug companies or the insurance companies or the wealthy. I would hope we would have had 50 Democrats. Mm-hmm. But if that is the case, then I hope that we will bring a strong bill to the floor of the Senate as soon as we can and let Mr. Manchin explain to the people of West Virginia why he doesn't have the guts to stand up to powerful special interests.
Oh, so you want to vote on it no matter what, even if...
Absolutely. Absolutely. The American people have got to understand what is at stake. For decades now, what Congress has been doing, giving tax breaks to the rich, not standing up to the drug companies, so that we end up paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, ignoring climate change. The President of the United States and almost every Democrat is trying finally to address these issues.
Did you know this was coming?
Mr. Manchin doesn't want to support us. Well, look, we've been dealing with Mr. Manchin for month after month after month. But if he doesn't have the courage to do the right thing for the working families of West Virginia and America, let him vote no in front of the whole world.
So how do you tell somebody out there watching, wondering, how come you couldn't get Joe Manchin on board?
Well, as I've indicated, we're taking on not just Joe Manchin, we're taking on, you know how much money the pharmaceutical industry has spent in the last year on lobbying alone? Over $300 million, plus campaign contributions, plus all kinds of advertising. Fossil fuel industry is spending a fortune. Let's not kid ourselves. We have a corrupt political system dominated by big money interests. And finally, some of us are saying, let's stand up for working families. Average workers not seeing a pay raise in inflation accounted for dollars in 45 years, while the rich are becoming phenomenally richer. Corporate profits are at an all-time high. And what some of us are saying, maybe, we'll stand up for working families for a change. But apparently we don't have the 50 votes that we need. And I think we take that message right into the 2022 campaign. Which party, with the exception maybe of one or two people, which party is prepared to do the right things for the elderly, for the children? And by the way, we talk about kids. I want everybody out there to know, if Mr. Manchin votes no, those $300 tax credits that have gone a long way to reducing childhood poverty in America, they're gone. Mm-hmm. That's over. We cut childhood poverty by over 40%. An extraordinary accomplishment. Manchin doesn't want to do that. Tell that to the struggling families of West Virginia and America.
So you're suggesting he doesn't have the guts to stand up for working families and to take on the moneyed interests. If Senator Manchin were here, he would say, my state is a state that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. What I'm doing and going after and opposing this legislation will be popular. And Manchin has said he thinks all this money, he's saying all this money is going to make inflation worse.
Let me talk about it. Joe Manchin voted for a huge increase in military spending. Manchin voted for an infrastructure bill, which added $250 billion to the deficit. The truth of the matter is that if you look at the military budget, $770 billion, times that by 10 years, it is 4 times higher than what the Build Back Better plan is. Now, Mr. Manchin says he's representing the people of West Virginia. Okay, why don't you do a poll? It's CNN, do a poll. And you ask the people of West Virginia whether or not they want to lower the cost of prescription drugs. You ask them whether they want to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and eyeglasses. You ask them whether they want to continue the $300 payment to help working parents in these very difficult times bring up their kids with dignity. Ask them if they want to deal with climate change. Mm. On all of those issues, I suspect people of West Virginia, like every other state in this country, will say, yes, do the right thing for working families.
You don't have to suspect it, Bernie. We know. As I just discussed, there was polling done by Data for Progress not too long ago on Build Back Better. West Virginia likely voters. 68% of them support Build Back Better. 90% of Democrats, 64% of independents, and even 56% of Republicans support Build Back Better in West Virginia. West Virginia, yes, it's a Republican state. It's a Trump state. But they also have a strong labor history in that state. Union history. And they used to only vote for Democrats. And so they have very unorthodox or heterodox politics. And we're going to get to a story on that later where the media spoke to a Trump supporter in West Virginia about Build Back Better, Biden's agenda. And you're going to be surprised as to what that Trump voter thinks about Build Back Better and what he wants Joe Manchin to do. So we know, based on the numbers, that Joe Manchin is not a West Virginia Democrat. He's a Goldman Sachs Democrat. He's a corporate Democrat. So he's representing industry over his constituents. We know that. You don't need to do another poll. I mean, you can, and the results will be exactly the same, but we already have the information. And so, yes, when Bernie says, okay, go explain to the people of West Virginia what you're doing, he's right that they're going to say, I don't like it. So let's go through a lot of what he says here. Makes a lot of great points, calls him corrupt. It is too little too late. But he's wrong about one big thing that we'll get to, okay? But he says, listen, this is about elder care, home care, lower drug prices, Medicare expansion. These are all things that would help West Virginia voters, and Manchin is against them. He brings up Big Pharma's lobbying here, and Joe Manchin doesn't have the guts and he doesn't have the courage to take on the moneyed interest. That's right. In fact, he's doing their bidding. He even uses the word corrupt there when talking about Joe Manchin and when talking about our political system and the process. Bernie's plan is to vote on it anyway, even though we know Manchin's going to vote against it. And, I mean, that's fine, but Manchin's going to vote against it. You know, it's not like if you force the vote on this, which you should do, the result is going to be that it's going to fail. And maybe now Kyrsten Sinema feels like she has cover, so she might vote for it, just to put, so all the blame goes on Manchin. Or maybe she'll also vote against it. But he's not going to vote for it. And that is a complete and utter failure, not just of Joe Manchin, but also of Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and even Bernie Sanders. Because, you know, they were convinced behind the scenes that backslapping with Joe Manchin, calling him JoJo and weakening the bill in 1,000 ways, that would get his vote. And left critics all along said, number one, you can't delink the bills, but also this strategy isn't going to work with Joe Manchin, which is why I've been on this show screaming my head off about you got to threaten to prosecute his daughter for her EpiPen price gouging. You got to threaten to prosecute Joe Manchin for his conflicts of interest and his rampant corruption. You have to use the bully pulpit. If you don't want to go that route, then you have to go the route of massive public pressure. Let him know, look, we'll primary you and we'll put all the Democratic funds into the opponent against you and you're going to lose if you do that. We're going to go on the media and demonize you and say, you're the problem, you're the villain, you're representing industry, you're not representing the voters. If a Republican steps out of line for a major piece of Republican legislation, they make that person public enemy number one. And they either fall in line or defect, but you have to try. And they didn't try. You could have done rallies in West Virginia. You could have went and done that. The one time they touched a nerve with Manchin was when Bernie wrote an op-ed in West Virginia. That's when he flipped out. Okay, so that means you're on to something there. Do it again. Go do a rally. Go put pressure. Arm twist behind the scenes. Find a way. Now, here's where Bernie's wrong. He says, look, if this is what happens, then we have to take this message into the 2022 campaign, basically saying, like, you need more Democrats to get this done. Bernie, Democrats had a supermajority in the Obama administration, and they didn't get the policies that the people wanted. You got a right-wing healthcare plan, Obamacare. You should have gotten at least a public option. Really, you should have gotten single payer. But when you had a supermajority, you didn't get Dickie McGee's acts done. So the message of that is, well, even if we have a supermajority or a slim majority, the end result is the same. So that means, what do? It doesn't mean you're running into a brick wall and there's nothing you could do and there's no way out. It means you do what FDR did and you do what Lyndon Johnson did. Now, granted, FDR had a much bigger majority, but you have to work with what you have. To make a weird analogy here, and anybody, the 2% of my audience that's ever played golf in their life might understand this. If you're warming up on the driving range and you can't hit a straight shot and all you're doing is hitting shots off to the right, what do you do that day? Shit, I keep missing to the right. I can't fix it while I'm here on the range. The ball's still going right. I'll just aim left on the course and play a fade all day, play a left to right shot all day. You have to work with what you have. So look, this is what we have right now. We have a slim majority. Every single Democrat who's not falling in line and doing the right thing becomes public enemy number one. You crusade against them in public. You let them know you'll never have a job in Washington, D.C. again. Joe Biden should be on the phone with the industries that are thinking of hiring these people as lobbyists and saying, if you hire them as lobbyists, they are blacklisted. If you hire them as lobbyists, every single subsidy and every single tax cut that you're going to get is gone. So we're going to punish your bottom line. We're going to punish you financially if you play ball with Manchin and Sinema. Public pressure, rallies against them, media appearances, everything you have, every weapon in the arsenal you use. Again, the biggest one to me, to really scare the daylights out of them, is look, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. I'm going to prosecute you and your family if you don't do the right thing, and where there's smoke, there's fire. The federal government's conviction rate is through the roof, probably upwards of 90%. You want to go down in history as a corrupt goon senator? Look, either I'm going to come after you, or if you do the right thing, you'll be a hero. We'll build a fucking statue to you in West Virginia, Joe Manchin. We'll give you more money for infrastructure for your state in particular. You want somebody in your family to be in my administration? Not only will we not prosecute you if you do the right thing, whatever you want. You have a position in the administration. This is what you do. This is politics. They either don't know that or they don't care. And the reality is, when it comes to Democratic leadership, Bernie cares, but Democratic leadership does not care. Because they would rather have a slimmed down $1 trillion or so Build Back Better bill. And they thought Joe Manchin would ultimately sign on to that. Now that he's not signing on to that, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to do something about it? Or are you just going to stand there and bleed? And the answer is, they're going to stand there and bleed. Jesus Christ, man. Bernie also lays out Manchin is just flat out in favor of child poverty because you don't want to continue the child tax credit. So families are not going to be able to afford vital goods that they need. Now, there's a story that just broke this morning. Apparently, Manchin behind the scenes said, yeah, I want to stop the child tax credit because I think the parents are just taking the money and spending it on drugs. This is a guy who talks about entitlement culture. As he begged for a bailout for Goldman Sachs recently, by the way. How's that for entitlement? He talks about entitlement culture and he says parents are spending child tax credit money on drugs. You're telling me you're not a Republican? Then he talks about, inflation. Build Back Better has nothing to do with inflation, as I've laid out 1,000 times. It's the supply chain, it's monopolies, and it's corporate greed. Those are the three things that are leading to inflation. It's not me speaking, that's various experts and economists speaking. So, Bernie's taking the gloves off here, but it's too little too late. This should have happened a long time ago. There should have been a deal cut behind the scenes. Instead, they were treating Joe Manchin like he's a genuine ideological actor. He's not. He's a corrupt actor. He's representing industry. He's representing lobbyists. He's representing special interests. He's representing his own bottom line with his own investments. And so there is no real... Think about it. If he was really like a centrist or a moderate and he just wanted the bill to look a different way, they already gave him everything he wanted. So why was he still against it when they gave him everything he wanted? Because he was never actually in favor of any of it. And he got the thing he said he wanted for real, the traditional infrastructure bill, because a lot of that had giveaways to corporations in it. And as soon as you delink the bills, you were donezo. And, only 6 progressives in the House voted against it and said, nothing's going to get passed on reconciliation now. And they were right. We were proven right. The left was proven right. Can't take this guy at his word. You can't take Joe Biden at his word either. Oh, I'll get the votes. My ass cheeks will get the votes. You didn't. So my message to the progressives who voted for it is, how you like them apples? You should be embarrassed. And if I'm a progressive in the House, you use whatever power you can to get the right outcome now. So what I would do if I was progressive in the House, try to form a coalition of 12 or 14 left Democrats and say, listen, we're not playing around anymore. And we're trying to save your own ass here, Democratic Party and Joe Biden. We're going to block every single piece of legislation. You won't even be able to name a road or a bridge if I have something to do with it. I'm going to block everything unless you break out that executive order pen right now, legalize marijuana, which you can do through executive order, abolish all student loan debt, which you can do through executive order, expand healthcare, which you can do through executive order, and the list goes on and on. I'm not done. I'm going to keep going. Here's a list of 10 things. Do it all, or you don't get a single thing through, and you are the lamest of lame duck presidents ever. That's what you do. So Bernie's finally fighting, but it's too little too late. And Manchin's laughing the entire time.